Moed of Achron Pesach. I'm getting mixed up my Achrons and my Shabbos Chol Moed. But you'll see what I'm talking about when we start reading. We're going to start from the beginning of the page. This was actually a Sikha that Rebbe said 40 years ago, Shabbos Parshas Acharei, Mevorchem HaChodesh Iyar. And in that Shabbos, he's talking about what happened the previous Shabbos. Because the Rebbe said that from the previous Shabbos, the next Shabbos receives its bracha. So he says, Haftoida, top of the page, Haftoida, the Shabbos Chol Moed Pesach, the Haftoida that we read on Shabbos in the intermediate days of Pesach is Nevuas Yecheskel, the prophecy of Yecheskel, Oidis Hatzomas Hayaveshis, about the dry bones. What is the main point of that Haftoida? Shetoichna ha'inyan the Tchias HaMesim. The content of that Haftoida is the resurrection of the dead. Hinani Pesachas Kivrisechem, behold, I am opening up your graves. Ve'leisiaschem Kivrisechem imi ami, and I will take you out of your graves. Ve'leisiaschem al admas Yisrael, and I will bring you to the land of Yisrael. V'nasati ruchi b'chem, and I will place my spirit in you. V'chisam, and you will live. V'goyim. Ukedisu b'gemara, like it's brought down the Gemara, Gimel mafteches b'yad shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu shleim nimsru yad shliach. There are three keys in the hands of Hashem that He does not share it with anyone. He does not give it to any representative or messenger. He Himself is in charge of doing it. One of the three is maftech shel tchias hamesim, the key of the resurrection. Menayin, how do we know that the key of the resurrection is something that Hashem holds on to? He's the only one that is in control of it. The Chsiv, like it says in that nevuah, Yidaitem ki ani Hashem, you will know that I am Hashem, but pischias kivrisechem, when I will open up your graves. When Imtza comes out, Shagam b'Shabbos Chol Moed Pesach, Mudgeshes Shleimus HaGeulah, even on Shabbos of Chol Moed Pesach, even before we get to Achron Shel Pesach, where over there it's the well-known Haftodah that talks about Moshiach in the last day of Pesach, even beforehand in Shabbos of Chol Moed Pesach is emphasized Shleimus HaGeulah, the perfection of the Geulah, Tchias HaMesim La'asad Lavi, the resurrection of the dead when Moshiach comes. If we get to add, Shebeinyan HaGeulah Shebaftodah, the Shabbos Chol Moed Pesach, in the matter of the redemption. That's an Haftodah of Shabbos, of the intermediate days of Pesach. Yesh Ilui V'Shleimus, there's a quality and a perfection, Legabi Inyan HaGeulah Shebaftodah, the Achron Shel Pesach. In comparison to the redemption, that's an Haftodah of the final day of Pesach. It will still be the day in Noiv, it says in the previous Perek, that a shoot will come out, or a branch will come out from the offspring of Yishai v'Gomer, talking about David, talking about Moshiach, who comes from David, was a son of Yishai. So, in other words, there is, speaking about Mashiach's times in the Haftodah of Shabbos Chol Moed Pesach, and there is also a lot about Mashiach, as we know, in Achron Shel Pesach, and that's the source, and that's the manifestation of what we talk about always, Achron Shel Pesach. We make a Suda of Mashiach, etc., etc. Ubagdam. So the Rebbe says, the Hagdam, we need a preface to be able to understand how the Haftodah of Shabbos Chol Moed Pesach, is a discussion about Mashiach, is even greater than the discussion about Mashiach in the Haftodah of Achron Shel Pesach. We need a preface first to see how the Rambam speaks about Mashiach's times. At the end of the Laws of Kings, which is the end of the entire 14 volumes of the Rambam, the Rambam writes, quote, do not think that in the days of Mashiach any matter from the way the world runs will cease. So there will be something new in the creation. The Rambam says, don't think that way. The world is going to keep on like its custom always. So the Rambam is going to address like the elephant in the room. We see the pasuk also in the Haftodah of Achron Shel Pesach. This is what it says in Yeshaya. In Haftodah of the final day of Pesach, that a wolf will live together with a sheep, and a leopard will skip and jump with a kid goat. So therefore, we seem to see that that's completely unnatural, and that's a change of the usual way how the world runs. So the Rambam says, Mashal v'chida, this is all a metaphor. This is the expression of to show about how the Jewish people will live at peace with all their neighbors, that all the neighbors are likened to all these wolves that are surrounding us, like 70 wolves that surround the sheep. So that's what the pasuk is referring to. As we know, many prophecies, many nevuos throughout the Sifrei Nevi'im speak in languages of metaphor. It doesn't always use the terms, the literal meaning. And then the Rambam says there are other psukim in a similar vein that are also metaphors. So too in similar things concerning Mashiach are metaphors. And the Rambam supports himself from what it's brought down the Gemara. Amr Chachamim, the sages said, the only difference between the world at present to the Mashiach's times is only the difference of us being under the enslavement or under the control of other governments, or whether we will have our own independent rulership. The Jews will not be beholden to any other government or nation. So the Rebbe right away asks on this Rambam, how does this Rambam make any sense? Seemingly it's a very big wonder. One of the 13 principles of faith. By the way, the 13 principles of faith, who was the one that codified them as 13 principles of faith? The Rambam himself. The Rambam in his commentary on Mishnayos, in Masechta Sanhedrin, on the Mishnah, says, Kol Yisrael Shlem Chelik Le'olam Haba. He speaks over there about the 13 principles of faith. And one of them is, Inyan the Tchias HaMeisim, is the idea of the resurrection of the dead. There's no greater change of the way the world runs than the dead arising. So how can the Rambam say that there's nothing going to change? Skip the next paragraph in the brackets to the paragraph afterwards. V'im kain, how does the Rambam write that in the days of Moshiach there won't be anything new in the creation of the world? The world will be running like it always runs. There's no greater new thing done in the world than the resurrection of the dead. Therefore, we must say that there's two eras in the days of Mashiach. The first era, the world runs as normal. The only difference between the present days and when Mashiach comes is only being enslaved and under control of other governments of kingdoms. But in the second era, there'll be new things and changes in the creation, up till the most unbelievable change, the resurrection of the dead. According to this, what the Rambam writes that in the days of Mashiach, the world will run as normal. The intention of the Rambam is the beginning of the era of the days of Mashiach is not dependent on seeing any change in how the world runs. The Rebbe continues in the brackets, like the Rambam himself writes prior to this about the coming of the King Moshiach, in the quote, Al Yalal Daitcha Shamelech HaMashiach Tzarech Lasis Oisis Moifsim. Do not think that King Moshiach has to do wonders and signs, Chadish Dvarim Ba'olam, and bring new things into the world, or resurrect the dead. Rather, Ein Bein HaOlam Hazeli Moisa Mashiach Elo Shibud Malchus Bilvad. The only difference between the present time and Mashiach's times is only the enslavement of the governments, being under control of the governments. So the Rebbe says as follows: Kishebatal Shibud Malchus, when the entire idea of Jews being free of any governments. So that's a sign that the era of the days of Mashiach has arrived. Though there was nothing new in the creation, like V'gor Zevim Keves V'goymer, like a wolf will live with a sheep, concerning the wolf with the sheep, etc., it's enough to look at it as a metaphor about how the Jewish people will live with the nations around them. But despite that, the Rambam does not mean to negate that the idea of the wolf and the sheep living together is never under any possibility going to happen in the simple sense. Rambam, like the Rambam himself writes, quote, Kol elu advarim ki yotze behem. All of these matters about the different prophecies concerning Mashiach's times, and similar to them, lo yeda adam echiyu ad sheyu. A person does not know how they will be until they occur. Shedvarim stumim hem eitzal neviim, because these are things that are kept sealed and closed off by the prophets. Not only that, he writes explicitly in his epistle, in his letter about the resurrection of the dead, that he says, what we wrote, what we said about that the wolf and the sheep will live together is a metaphor. The Rambam says, I don't mean it to say that this is absolutely that way. And if it means literally that the sheep will live with the wolf, so there will be a miracle and it will happen. In other words, the Rambam himself agrees. It's very possible that we will see eventually that the intention in the pasuk was actually, in a literal sense, that literally the wolf and the sheep will live together. Now the Rebbe adds another point. This idea that maybe this way, maybe that way, was only in the times of Rambam. At present, we know for sure that it means literally. For us, we do not have to wait till this matter becomes clarified. When Mashiach comes, and we'll see, is the sheep living with a wolf or not? Since this was already clarified in the teachings of Chassidus, that the wolf living with the sheep is the literal sense. Chidush is a novel and unique thing that will happen in the creation. Based on this, now that we understand that there's two eras, and there's the miraculous time, and there's the pre-miraculous time, based on that, we can understand what we began to talk about, the advantage and the quality of the Haftorah of Shabbos Chalamoid Pesach over Acharei Pesach. Val Pisa moving ha'ilui b'inyan ha'geulah sheb'Haftorah is Shabbos Chalamoid Pesach legabe inyan ha'geulah sheb'Haftorah d'Acharei Pesach. According to this understood, the advantage and quality concerning the redemption in the Haftorah of Shabbos of the intermediate days of Pesach over how the Geulah is discussed in the Haftorah of the final day of Pesach. B'Haftorah the Acharei Pesach medubar oidos hascholas hatkufa d'moisei Mashiach. The period of the Haftorah we read on the final day of Pesach, that's talking about the beginning of the era of the days of Mashiach. Beginning from the very revelation of King Mashiach. Like it says over there in the Haftorah, that a branch will go out from the shoot of Yishai, and from his root, the branches will multiply. According to the opinion of the Rambam, that at that time, at the first era, when Mashiach first will become revealed, the world could run in a normal fashion, Mulvad, Bittul, Shibud, Malchis, except for the fact that the Jewish people will be free of any type of government enslavement and rule. What it says in the continuation of the Haftorah of the final day of Pesach, that a wolf will live with a sheep, and a young child it will lead them. This doesn't mean in the literal sense, Chidush Ma'aseh Bereishis, a novelty in the creation. That's only a metaphor. That is the Haftorah of the final day of Pesach. But prior to that, in Chalamoid, v'ilu b'haftorah the Shabbos Chalamoid Pesach, as opposed to that in the Haftorah of Shabbos, of the intermediate days of Pesach, it speaks about a later period in the days of Mashiach itself. Hashleimus the Moshiach. We're talking about the perfection and the ultimate level of the days of Mashiach. Then it will be the resurrection of the dead. The greatest type of new type of thing in the creation. So here the Rebbe is going to explain that even when we're talking about this very high level, even that very high level, and not only that, but especially the high level, is connected with us. Tezayin. Even the quality and advantage of the second era. In the days of Mashiach, the ultimate perfection of the days of Mashiach, and again, this is a quote from the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, and the resurrection. Tolib Masenu or Jasenu calls Ma Mesh Chagolos, Alter Rebbe says, is dependent on our actions and service the entire time of the duration of Golos. How you do the Torah Magid, like the well-known expression of the teaching of the Mezritcher Magid and the Alter Rebbe, the Bir HaMishnah, explaining what it says in Mishnah and Pirkei Avos. Da malamayla mimach. Know what's above of you. What does that mean? Kol mashalamayla koil mimach. Everything that's above it's all from you. The Rebbe on other occasions emphasizes the koil mashal mayla ha koil memach. Everything, like a double tap of everything. There's no exclusion to this. Hainu shagam ha'inyonim hachin nailim, even the most loftiest things. Kol mashal mayla, everything of above. Tluyim ba'avodas ha'adam are dependent in the service of a person. That is the lesson concerning our actual action in continuation to what was said earlier in this Farbrengen, that the avodah at present these days has to be similar to the state and situation that's going to be in the days of Mashiach. What does that mean? That we have to do our avodah now similar to what's going to be in the times of Mashiach. We should not be satisfied with an avodah that's similar to the beginning of the days of Mashiach. When the world is acting and running in a normal way. Without any change and without any new stuff going on in the world. Is only in a way that the governments will stop ruling over us. Meaning, what does it mean that he acts, he's doing his avodah now like in the first era where the governments don't have any control over them? He does his service in such a way that there are no obstacles, there's nothing standing in his way, like we said earlier in the Farbrengen. That's not enough. That attitude only reflects and prepares us for the first era of Mashiach when we're free, we're not under the control of other governments. Rather, our avodah has to be of a higher level. Similar to the ultimate perfection that's going to be in the days of Mashiach and the resurrection of the dead, when there will be a change in how the world will run. And the novelty and uniqueness in the actions of the creation. A service that is beyond measure and boundaries of the definitions and the limitations of the world. That is similar to the complete supernatural way how things are going to be when Mashiach comes in the second era. We have to mimic that in our avodah as well, breaking out of our own barriers and breaking out of the barriers of the world. Ois Yud Zayin. We can add explanation in the connection between the avodah at present in a manner that is similar to the state and situation of the days of Mashiach. Until not just the days of Mashiach, but the ultimate time of Mashiach, which is that second era where everything's going to be miraculous. The connection is l'kol echad v'echad Yisrael. How is this connected with every single Yid? Every Yid has a spark of the neshama of Mashiach. On the pasuk in the nevuah of Bilam, it says that a star will shoot out from Yaakov. Mevor b'Chazal the koya malach Mashiach. In Chazal, it's explained what is the star that's shooting out of Yaakov referring to. It's going on King Mashiach. Valderach Zeba Rambam, similarly the Rambam, he says about the nevuah of Bilam, it says that Niba b'shnei Mashiach, that Bilam said prophecy concerning both Mashiachs, meaning by Mashiach Harishon Shu David and the first anointed king, which is David HaMelech, and Mashiach Achron, the final Mashiach, Mashiach Tzidkenu, Dorach Kaicha Miyakiv, the David, that a star shoots out or shot out from Yaakov, that's going on David HaMelech, V'kam Shevet Yisrael, and a staff will arise from the Jewish peoples, the Melech HaMashiach is going on King Mashiach. Amnam yet Matzinu Birushalmi Shadorach Koichel Miyakiv Koya Kolech V'echad Yisrael. The Yerushalmi says that when it says that a star shot out from Yaakov, it's going on every single Yid. Shalachein, therefore, Pisrei Nacholam the Bola Chad Kechavam, the interpretation of a dream that a person swallowed up a star, Haya Bekesher Legavri Yehudai, was concerning a Jewish person. The Chsiv Dorach Koichav Miyakiv, that it says a proof that it's talking about a Jew is because the star shot out from Yaakov. For this reason, Jews are likened to stars. The Rebbe has a whole different thing. What are considered stars? We're not talking about football. We're not talking about other types of entertainment. Every Jew is a star. He's referring to a story that Yerushalmi says that there was different people came to have their dreams explained and interpreted, and there was a non-Jew that came to a certain Tana or a Moira, and he told him that I saw in my dream that I swallowed a star, and the person that was interpreting the dream says this means that he deserves to be cursed because he killed a Jew. Because the Gemara says, what's the association between swallowing a star and swallowing up a Jew? Because it says that a star came out of Yaakov. So we see that a star in that pasuk is not just referring to Mashiach, it's referring to every Jew. So he's saying, this idea that a star, which is the idea of Mashiach, refers to a Jew, it's so sure, even in a dream, skip the parentheses, it's impossible to be otherwise. So the question is, which is it? Is a star referred to Mashiach, or a star refers to every Jew? So he says in this last line on the page, V'nis Boyer, it was explained, there is no contradiction if we say the star or the pasuk is referring to Mashiach or it's referring to every Jew. According to what it says in the Sefer Ma'orei Naim of Rab Nachman Shadabler, skip the parentheses at the top of the next page. Shakol ish Yehudi, ish Yisrael, in the soul of every single Jew. Yesh nitzutz minishmasi shel Mashiach. There is a spark of the neshama of Mashiach. Kishem shenishmasa shel Mashiach in bechinas hayichida klal kol bnei Yisrael, just like the neshama of Mashiach is considered the yichida of the entire Jewish people. V'loy oid, not only is there a spark, but el shemitziyusei shel Mashiach tzidkeinu hi hametzias t'chol Yisrael. The very being of Mashiach is the very entire being of the entire Jewish people. Hamelech, it says in the Chazal, the Rambam himself says, this is a quote, and the Rebbe adds, Benidin Didan, in our case, which king are we talking about? Melech HaMashiach. Liboy Leiv Kol Chai Yisrael. His heart, it's the heart of the entire congregation of Yisrael. Kiloimer. This means to say, Al Derech Ubedugmas Halev Sheboy Toli Ikar Achai is similar to a heart, that in the heart dependent and the main life force and vitality. As it's known what the Cham Tzvi wrote, skip the parentheses, it's impossible for any creature to exist without a heart. Skip the brackets to the paragraph afterwards. Since Mashiach, our righteous one, is a king, that's why we call him King Mashiach. The existence of all entire Jewish people is dependent on the existence of King Mashiach, Leiv Kol Kal Yisrael, the heart of all the congregation of Yisrael. According to this, it's simply understood. Every single Yid, it's possible, and therefore there has to be a service that is similar to the type of service of the days of Mashiach. Like we said before, not just has to be a service similar to the beginning, the first era of the days of Mashiach, where everything's going to be natural and he's going to be able to do an avodah, his avodas Hashem without any types of obstacles. Elegam tkufa shniya, there has to be an avodah now similar to the second era, where it's going to be a chiddush ma'aseh bereishis, a novelty in the creation. What we said before about the avoided at present, in such a manner that's similar to the days of Mashiach. Until the perfection of the days of Mashiach. What is the avodah these days? What's the first and foremost thing that Rebbe says? The avodah that has to be is the belief in King Mashiach and awaiting his coming. So the Rebbe says the awaiting of his coming is not just supposed to be in a general fashion. The belief in the coming of Mashiach and awaiting his coming has to be not just concerning the first era of the days of Mashiach, when nothing will stop from the normal running of the world, only the enslavement of the governments. Skip the brackets. Also concerning the second era, we also have to be awaiting and we have to be expecting and hoping, etc., for the period of the perfection of the days of Mashiach, when there will be this novelty and uniqueness in the creation, until the ultimate change of the resurrection of the dead. This means to say, the belief in the coming of Mashiach and the awaiting his coming has to be in such a manner that already at the beginning we know that in the days of Mashiach the world will run in a different and novel way, a miraculous way of running beyond nature. And this idea that we need to already initially emphasize about the supernatural way how the world will run the days of Mashiach. So this, the Rebbe is going to say, express itself in the order of these two haftorahs. You could ask, seemingly, if there's the first period, and the first era is in the Haftarah of Acharei Shel Pesach. And the second era is in the Haftarah of Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach. Why do we do the second era before the first era? So he says that's why it actually says it first, to tell you what our focus has to be on. Mizbata, this is expressed Bagdomas Haftarah, the Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach. It's expressed in prefacing the Haftarah of the Shabbos of Chol Hamoed Pesach, which talks about Atzomas Eiveshes, the dry bones, La Haftarahs, the Acharei Shel Pesach, Oida Yom B'Noiv, concerning that precedes the Haftarah of the final day of Pesach, which begins with the idea of that still in the days when it can be in Noiv there. Oid Lefnei Shekoyim Es Haftarah. Even before we read the Haftarah that it speaks over there about the beginning of the revelation of King Moshiach, that a shoot will go out from the planting of Yishai. We're talking about a case in the Haftarah of Acharei Shel Pesach where just now he came out and became revealed. But before we even get to that, Magdimim Likrayas Haftarah, we do before that to read Haftarah Sheba Matur Amatzav the Shleimus Yimais Mashiach Tkufa Beis. We first read the Haftarah that over there is described the matzav of the perfection of the days of Mashiach. The second era, Chiddush U'Maisa Bereishis, the novelty in the creation, Tchias HaMesim, which is the resurrection of the dead. Dugma L'Davar, an example for this where we find that we already, before anything, we have to bring in Mashiach. Divrei HaMedrash, the words of the Medrash, V'ruach Elokim Merachefetz al Pnei HaMayim. Right away in the beginning of the creation, it says the Spirit of Hashem was hovering over the waters, and the Medrash says, Zeh Ruchei Shel Malach HaMashiach. That is the Spirit of the King Mashiach. Hainu Shemiyad Ba'aschos B'rias HaOlam, immediately at the beginning of the creation of the world. Lefnei B'rias Adam Adishon, even before Adam Adishon was created. V'alachas kam v'kam lefnei Matan Torah, even before the giving of the Torah. Madgishim kvar oides mitziyusei shel Malach HaMashiach. We already emphasize about Mashiach's existence. And the Rebbe goes on to say a very geschmackes story with the Rebbe Rashab. He says in the brackets, also from the directive of the Rebbe Rashab to the teacher of his young granddaughters. Bishamai, when he heard that the teacher, the Malamed, when he was teaching his granddaughters about miraculous things, this Malamed was trying to explain them, those miracles, and to bring them in a more rational thing as much as it's possible to rationalize them. And why was he doing so? The Malamed was worried that perhaps because of their young age, the miracles will not be something that their minds would be able to relate to and accept. So when the Rebbe Rashab heard about this, he said, no. The way how you're acting has to be just the opposite than the way you're acting. This means to tell his granddaughters the truth. That these miracles that he's learning with them in the Torah are completely outside of the realm of nature. Shekain, therefore, in addition to what's explained in a sefer called Sefer Chassidim about this is an ethical sefer from the early before the Middle Ages, etc. The great care from saying something that is untrue, especially to young children. So in addition to that issue, the main thing is one of the foundations of education of Jewish children. Initially, right away at the beginning, they need to know there are two ways how Hashem runs the world. Hanhoga Tivis, there's a natural way the way Hashem runs the world. Vanhoga Nisis Shalomaylam Derech HaTava, and there's a supernatural way, a miraculous way. It's beyond nature that Hashem runs the world. Ukimudgish Gam B'Chag HaPesach, like this is also emphasized on the Yom Tov of Pesach. Shemiyad Baschos Leila Seder, immediately at the beginning of the Seder night, Oisim Kamashinuim, we do different changes, to make the children wonder. Should ask Manishtana. And then you could tell them the story as it says in the pasuk, you shall tell over to your son about the miracles and wonders of going out of Mitzrayim. With a strong hand of his right natuyan, an outstretched arm of him, with great awe, and the signs and wonders. With all the details of the matters that are related in Agada, Nisim Shalom Derech HaTeva, miracles that are beyond nature. So the main thing is, we need to already at the beginning know about what's going to happen later on. Let's see a little bit further. So the Rebbe continues and explains that every aspect has to be as part of the belief and the looking forward to about Mashiach's times. All the novelties, all the miracles, the idea of the wolf will live with the sheep in the simple sense, because Acharei explained that it means literally. And for sure, you got to look forward to, even the Rambam says, it's one of the 13 attributes, one of the 13 principles. You got to look forward to the days of Mashiach and to the Tchias HaMeisim that's going to happen. So it's not just the general thing about Mashiach. You have to look forward and know all the details and how much supernatural things that is going to happen in the second era of Mashiach's times. Let's skip down to, let's see over here. 1 second. Actually, before we skip, I just gave you the overview. Let's learn just one paragraph over here. Good test. So, Protis Yosef more specifically. At the end of the laws of kings, the Rambam writes, quote, King Moshiach is going to arise. Whoever doesn't believe in him or doesn't await his coming, he doesn't just deny all other prophets like Yeshayahu Navi that spoke about Mashiach and other prophets, Moshe Rabbeinu, he's denying the Torah. And in Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Rambam goes on to explain many, many details, both concerning the King Mashiach Atzmai himself, and also concerning the state and situation of the world during the days of Mashiach. All these details are not just telling stories. It's a ruling. Skip the parentheses to the last line. There's an obligation to believe and to await. Not just to the general coming of King Mashiach, also according to all the detailed things that the Rambam already enumerated. And now that we know that V'gar Zevim Kevis is also literal, so therefore we have to await that and we have to look forward to that as well. Let's skip down all the way to 3 lines from the bottom of the page. If we get to add and everything that we spoke about earlier, there's an additional emphasis in this generation. According to all the signs that were brought down, the words of our sages, we find ourselves in the generation of the heels of Mashiach. And day after day, we are getting closer and closer to the era of the days of Mashiach. From the time that we last spoke about it, in other words, the last Farbrengen when the Rebbe spoke about it on Acharei Pesach, Avru kama regoyim shoyes v'yamim, many minutes, hours, and days passed. Uba Mela, and therefore niskadavnu yoyselot kuvadim Mashiach. We become even closer to the era of the days of Mashiach. When Nimtza comes out, Shemelech HaMashiach Yachol Lavoil, take from a yad that King Mashiach can come immediately. Afilu boy from the Oni V'Reich V'Lachmoyer, even in a manner of a poor person riding on a donkey. V'Alachs Kama V'Kama boy from the Zochim Anon Ishmaya, and how much more so that if we merit, he's going to come with the clouds of heavens. Keref Ayin, like an eye blink. Umekiv and Sheyachol Lavoi, take from a yad, since he can come immediately. Bevada Yavoi, take from a yad, so surely he will come immediately. Since that is the case, surely the King Mashiach already exists in the world. Not just he is in a state of pregnancy, he still has to come out into the world. Like it says that the shoot will come out from the planting of Yishai. His existence is already in the world. His existence is like an adult, meaning he has to be already a Melech and Beis David. He has to be a king from the house of David, learning Torah and involved in mitzvahs like David, his forefather. This generation, there has to be an additional emphasis in everything connected to the belief in the coming Mashiach and awaiting his coming. A belief and an awaiting that permeates the entire being of a person in all the powers of his soul. Until thought, speech, and deed. Chaf Aleph. And in simple words concerning our actual service. The thought of a Jew has to be permeated with his belief and awaiting the coming of Mashiach. If his thought is permeated in it, so then this comes an actual expression, both in speech, the way he speaks with another about the coming of Mashiach is with passion and excitement, with words that come out of the heart. It's the nature of a person that matters that come out of the heart enter the heart. This means that even the other becomes permeated in the belief and awaiting for the coming of Mashiach. And the Rebbe adds an amazing thing that he spoke about earlier in the Farbrengen, not a part of that we learned yet. Like we learned in Ois Yud, in this speaking with another with a passion about the coming of Mashiach, it also includes speaking with non-Jews about the quality and advantage of the days of Mashiach. That then there will be no famine and no war. Kanal Baruch, like we spoke earlier in the Sikh at length. And like we said, with matters that come out of the heart, they will enter the heart. Keteva Adam, like the nature of people is. Loidak b'nei Yisrael. It doesn't only mean that when you speak words of the heart, it's going to enter the heart by Jewish people. Agam b'nei Noach, even non-Jews, by speaking from the heart, it will enter their heart as well. And that's all thought and speech. And further, the thought is going to impact Heim B'maisa, also in action. Shavidose b'kima Torah mitzvah, his avoiding fulfillment of Torah and its mitzvahs, hafotzas haTorah v'ayad, spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit, v'afotz hamayon chutza, and spreading the wellsprings outward. He ba'oifin shuma'ein v'dugmas hamayim the matzah d'mais Mashiach, it's in such a manner that it's similar to the state and situation of the days of Mashiach. Heim b'yachas laheder metzias shel meniah v'ikuv chulu, both concerning the fact that he doesn't have any obstacles in his doing Torah mitzvahs, like we said earlier. That is reminiscent and that is mimicking what's going to be in the first era of Mashiach, where we're not going to have any enslavement from the kings. And then his avoida in a way that mimics the second era of Mashiach, v'heim b'yachas la'avoida shilamaylum didvak bola de gidrei oilum kanal baruch, and also considering the avoida that's beyond the measure and boundaries of the world, like we said earlier at length. By Iker, and the main thing is, through this we make closer and we speed up and we affect the true and complete redemption through Mashiach. He will come and redeem us and lead us upright to our land. Even prior to that, just like the following pasuk says, prior to the Eden going out of Mitzrayim, that before the Eden went out of Mitzrayim, it says, to all the Jewish people was light in their settlements. Also in the final moments of Golus, like it was in the redemption from Mitzrayim, that in the final moments of Golus, they had light already. And we know when Mashiach comes, it's going to be like your days going on the land of Mitzrayim. So therefore, just like when we went out of Mitzrayim, the final days, even before they went out, was a time of light. How much more so there has to be light in our settlements before we even go out of Golus, because it says, I will show you wonders in comparison to what took place in the times of Golus Mitzrayim. And Yitzias Mitzrayim, speedily in our days, in our time, Mamash.